Welcome to Say More from Boston Globe Opinion. I'm Anna Kussmer, podcast editor at The Globe, here with another installment of the comment section. In these Say More episodes, we identify a Globe opinion story that has really hit a nerve with readers, and we talk to the author about it. I'm in the studio with Shirley Leung. Hi, Shirley.
Hi, Anna.
So on the last episode of the comment section, we talked to a writer about dating over 50, and you will probably remember the intense and mostly negative feedback she got on her Globe Opinion article about that.
Yeah, it was pretty hateful and mean-spirited, and sometimes our comments are like that.
Yeah. I mean, she hit a nerve sort of in a way that brought out a lot of the ugliness of what the comment section can be. We learned a lot, but it wasn't pretty. Today, I wanted to take things into another direction because the comment section or reader engagement isn't always bad at all. I talked to a columnist about one of her beats with a really gratifying comment section. We'll get into that in a second. And then later in the episode, I hopped behind the mic with Matthew Bernstein, Globe Opinion's letters editor, and he took me through some of his favorite letters of the month. Turns out, Shirley, election season is a busy time for letters editors. Who knew?
Lots of opinions.
It's a time where opinions are very plentiful. So to get to today's interview, I have one question for you, Shirley. Are you a dog person?
I am a dog person. My dog's name is Ellie. She's half Shar-Pei and half pug. She is so adorable.
So, pretty small?
No.
Really?
She's on the bigger side. She's actually overweight.
Oh.
She's about 50 pounds. She's
50? Oh, my God. I always pictured a small dog.
Well, Shar-Pei is big.
Oh, right.
And then Pug is small.
Right.
But she's in the middle, so she's about 50 pounds.
I'm also a dog person, and
you don't have a dog. Wait,
I do.
Yes, that's right. I met your dog.
Yeah.
What kind of dog do you have?
She is a poodle mix. I like to say that she has main character syndrome because she thinks she is the absolute center of the universe. That's her identity. And everyone else is just here to, be there for her, play with her,
wow.
Notice her. So she's small in stature, but she has a big presence. Let's put it that way.
No, my dog is pretty laid back. My dog is the perfect dog because she's very lazy, and we're kind of a lazy family.
Lazy's good.
Yeah, and so we don't have to walk her too much, and she's a rescue dog.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's a rescue
dog.
Yeah, she's I think she just turned 9, so she's an older dog.
So I'm sure you know and follow Globe columnist Marcela García. Many know her as a smart voice on politics and immigration policy, but she's also cornered the market on pet coverage in Globe Opinion. Have you read her stuff?
I have.
Marcela wrote a column recently that had a ton of reader engagement, and I actually found it really illuminating about this other side of the comment section, the fact that it can be a place of almost community building in reader engagement. And Marcela she's written so much about pets that I think a lot of her readers actually see her as a real authority on not just the politics and all these interesting things about pet ownership, but just as almost like someone to connect to about a love of pets and an interest in pets.
Right. I mean, that's very interesting. A safe space in the comments section, right?
Yes, you'll see, Shirley. It exists. It's real. So let's get into my chat with Marcela. I first asked her how she found herself writing so much about pets.
It was very organic, Anna, because I am a dog lover, first and foremost. I have 2 dogs, an 11-year-old yellow lab called Santo and a 3-year-old yellow lab called Benito. And it's so much a part of my identity. I'm a dog owner that it was kind of very organic that I started to merge this other part of myself with my identity as a columnist. And the reason why I started, again, I said it was very organic because I realized that dog ownership intersects a lot with public policy. I remember writing about, should dogs be allowed in public places? Can you bring your dog to a restaurant or stuff like that? But also other things that caught my eye. Again, as a dog owner, I wrote about SJC decisions, pet disputes. SJC, Supreme Judicial Court
The
decisions.
highest court in Massachusetts.
Right, the highest court in Massachusetts, pet dispute. For instance, when someone was getting a divorce, who's going to get the pet? And so many, many different topics that I started writing
For the podcast, we're always looking for stories that generate a lot of engagement. And I have noticed that your pet stories in general do that. But you wrote one story in particular that really hit an unexpected nerve with readers. Maybe you did expect it, but I was surprised at just how much engagement there was. And it was actually about a sad category of pet coverage, pet euthanasia, people putting their pets down, particularly their dogs, but also other animals. Can you tell me about the story that you wrote that kind of led to this whole discussion online?
Yeah, so this was another SJC case, a case of animal cruelty that ended up in the highest court. And it was a woman who had an older pet who was apparently suffering from from a host of physical ailments.
Hmm.
And the case progressed enough that an animal control officer came to her house, seized the pet, this again old dog called Tipper, and put him down,
Mm-hmm.
put the dog down without the owner's presence or knowledge. It was just a really, really sad and tragic case all around. And I figure it would be a good way into the very difficult topic of pet laws and pet euthanasia. As a dog owner, or as an owner of a dog who's 11
Hmm.
years old, as a senior pet, I think about a lot
Yeah.
about the time when he's gonna, be gone, and
Hmm.
how is that gonna look like? And maybe it's not healthy for me to start to spend a lot of time thinking about it, but it's my own way of processing that.
Yeah.
That I became interested in the case and decided to write about it. And I guess at the heart of the matter in the case is where's the line, right? Like where do you draw the line of animal abuse? What constitutes animal abuse? And as it turns out, in Massachusetts, we have very, very strict laws around animal abuse. And I think I guess my argument
Hmm.
after reporting and after speaking with lawyers and animal advocates, I sort of realized that maybe our laws need to be adjusted a little bit to clarify some of this, what constitutes animal abuse. Because right now, the way some lawyers put it is that some of these animal control officers have a lot of discretion, which again is not a bad thing
Right.
because you want to protect the animals. That's the point of these laws. But
Right.
in this case, again, it was just very hard to see whether this woman who was suffering, like she really cared for this pet, even though the pet was suffering. So,
Mhm.
so anyway, then in my reporting, I figure when I wrote that piece, I figured it would be a good idea to ask readers about their own stories of pet euthanasia, pet loss, pet grief. And I asked them to share them with me. And also, I asked them, how did you know it was time to let go, to put him down, to put your pet, your cat, your dog, to put him down? And so I did. I heard from around 100 people.
Yeah, one thing that struck me about your question and the topic is that it is this very sort of heavy topic of losing, an important member of someone's family, their pet, who they love. But there's like this extra element of the owners actually, unlike losing a family member, like the owners actually have to make a hard decision.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
not usually how we lose people. So it kind of there's a much more kind of there's often an internal debates and a lot of kind of pain with
Yeah.
like, did I make the right choice? So I thought that you asking people that, it seemed like a lot of people were like almost really eager to talk to you,
Yeah.
and really eager to talk through what happened to them and how they made that decision.
Yep.
So I think you hit on something that a lot of people wanted to talk about.
Totally.
So
Totally.
what kinds of responses did you get?
A lot of people just talk me through what the experience was like for them, how they made the decision, but also what that final day looked like. Like Paul Goodwin, a reader who wrote about letting go of his Chihuahua pug mix called Benny.
He developed a congestive heart condition, which we managed well for 5 to 6 years. Then one week he began to suffer seizures and spent 3 nights in the animal hospital. We were able to bring him home after seizures were managed for one night, but the next day he was clearly upset and in some sort of pain. He was constantly crying and would only calm down when being held and walked around the house. It was a Sunday, so we could not do a home visit. We called and made a difficult decision to bring him back to the animal hospital, that he was not going to get better. We had planned on perhaps weeks to months at most, but it turned out to be far less. It is the hardest, most painful decision a pet owner has to make, but that is why it's an act of love not to let your best friend suffer.
I also realized that a lot of people still wrestled with feelings of regret or just questioning themselves on whether they had taken the decision of putting their pets down at that specific moment, like Kate Chambers, who wrote to me about her dog Lucy.
Eventually, we were moved to the euthanasia room, which had couches and carpets and was generally more comfortable. There were Hershey's Kisses in a jar, and she accepted them. Chocolate posed no threat any longer. She seemed to enjoy them a bit. Finally, the vet came in, and it was over so quickly. The experience was traumatic for me, I hope not for her. I second-guess myself often, mostly wondering if I should have waited for someone to come to the house, if it had to be that day. Honestly, I think it did. I still miss her every day, and I try to focus on the 15 good years we had and not that awful last day.
You know, Marcella, one thing that struck me about a lot of these too is I mean, as you said, a lot of people were just going through the day, this traumatic day. And one thing, I'm also a dog person. I find these anecdotes really sad but beautiful, partly because, it's not just the sadness of losing a pet. It's the deep love people have for their pets. I find that very relatable because I have a dog I love so much. And one thing that struck me about sort of the tone and tenor of a lot of these notes is I'm sure I would guess a lot of these people read your columns, and know that you're somebody who has a really strong personal relationship with your own pets and kind of understands this like kind of pet love thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think that
yeah,
a lot of people, particularly with thinking about the death of a dog, it can be so hard,
yeah,
but people can feel almost a little bit maybe overly dramatic
yeah,
or like they don't know who they can talk to safely about it to not be like judged like you love your dog too much.
yeah. No, I hadn't thought about it that way, Anna, but I think you're right. I hope that people feel like writing to me about these issues is a safe space,
Mhm.
because I can never feel that you're being overdramatic about your dogs at all. Like there's no such thing in my world, and it's a nice way to put it because we all need safe spaces wherever we can find them right
Mhm.
now, and pet ownership is it's such a unique thing. Like people who don't get it and never
Yeah.
will. And so, like you said, losing a pet, it's not like losing a sibling or a relative or a father or a son. Never will be the same, but in its own very difficult way, it's very, very hard. And people need to process it. And I that was part of my intention too, to offer a space where people can share their grief, because I've always felt that shared grief it helps alleviate the load a little bit for people.
Yeah, that's a good segue to another note that you got from Pam Rogers. It's a very short note, but I think she kind of sums up the emotionality that is present in so many of these notes.
I have had 9 dogs in my lifetime. 2 of them are at my feet right now. I never want my beloved pets to suffer. So when the vet says that there's nothing more that can be done, when they let me know by refusing food, then letting them go is my last act of love.
That was so moving, especially because you can hear her dog
I
breathing right next to her.
I couldn't hear that.
It was so
Wow, I'll have to
compelling.
listen back. I trust you because of your expertise, but that is the fact that her dogs were with her when she was reading that. It's really moving.
I also, in the process of writing about this and reporting this pet euthanasia piece, I also learned new things. Like a reader who wrote to me, Nikki Vitale, she is an animal companion end of life doula,
Hmm.
which I didn't even know existed as a profession. Apparently, there are a couple of New England colleges that offer this certification, and it is what it sounds like.
I offer support to pet parents whose pet is facing a terminal illness. They may have months or weeks or days to live, and I'll help those folks navigate their way to ensuring that their pet has the best possible death.
It should be normalized, the fact that we go through so much trauma when we lose such big part of our lives and families. And I mean, I was even thinking that my own impetus for about writing about this is like dealing with the eventual death of my own dogs. My husband loves our dogs, but he's not a dog person. I
Interesting.
grew up as a dog person. I've always been a dog, like ever since I have, as a child, I was a dog person, but my husband isn't. And he has learned how to love our dogs. And I always tell him, you have no idea what's coming when we lose our
It's his
dogs.
first
It's his
dog.
first dog loss. And I get secondhand sort of preemptive grief just
Right.
thinking about how he's going to process
Yeah.
that.
You kind of touch on like a pretty philosophical, intense question of like how we as a society let go of our loved ones, and the question of humans having the right to end of life rights.
Yep.
That's such a fraught debate, but in a way, we're getting at a similar question of sort of like how are these decisions made? And I thought that was quite a kind of profound philosophical discussion happening among a lot of your readers, kind of wrestling with that, and that made me happy to see in the sense of, again, elevating this beat that you might think of as being a little bit frivolous. It's really not, because pet ownership, like so many other things, if you are in this community of pet lovers as we are, these very, very profound questions are part of what it is to be a pet owner and have that responsibility.
It has implications on many other topics, like larger implications, like the question of end of life rights. Like you said, that was another theme for sure. Like you mentioned among the readers' responses, that how ironic and how sad or how unfortunate it is that we extend this grace to our beloved animal companions, the gift of letting go, right? A final act of love, that we cannot offer it to humans, right? And again, this is a very fraught, controversial question, but it does. It exemplifies, like you said, how pet ownership touches on all, or has all these implications on other debates.
Yeah. So, Marcela, as we've said, this is a kind of small part of your job is writing about pets, but you write about so many other things, particularly a contentious topic like immigration. In general, when you write a story, do you read the comments? Do you engage much with readers?
No, this is the part that is very, very interesting. I stay away from the comment section. I get a lot of feedback from readers when I read about all these, more debatable topics like immigration policy and all that. And I just tend to, I don't dismiss them. I read the emails that I get, but they tend to be very extreme and not very constructive. In the comment section, again, I just stay away from it. But when I started writing about pets, I just realized that the comment section is not that awful or intense or polarizing. And I remember when earlier this year I wrote about my youngest dog, Benito. I took him to participate in a brain imaging research lab, a study at Harvard. And it was like Benito goes to Harvard, or my dog was accepted into Harvard type of thing. And when I read the comments in that column, I was very surprised, because some of the commenters were saying, "Oh, Marcela, I never agree with you on anything, but on this, I am with you 100%." Other people were saying, "Oh, Benito for president," like just marveling at my dog and what we allegedly learned about his behavior from his brain imaging. But yeah, no, it was very interesting to find out that there's this point of connection or this confluence, understanding, I guess, between me and readers who I don't typically agree with, or whom don't typically agree with me when I read about immigration or other things. So it's, I guess it balances out all these other hate mail or all these very intense negative comments that I get on my other columns.
Does it change the way you sort of largely see, like, obviously our relationship with readers, like it's kind of like a vague relationship. We're generally putting things out, but we don't want to be out of touch, and we want to be in relationship with our readers. Do you feel like this category of your writing is almost this like kind of healing space for you in terms of developing a relationship with readers?
That's a really good way to put it, for sure, because obviously, as a columnist, you're right. It's a very abstract thing, intangible thing, our relationship with the readers. And this makes it tangible. This makes it real. And uh, again, it's just very, very moving or very, I guess, it provides me, it's very gratifying to find that that there's this connection that I have with them. And yeah, as long as I can, I'm going to keep writing about my dogs and other people's dogs.
Yeah, I hope you never stop. Marcela Garcia is a columnist with Boston Globe Opinion. She has a newsletter called Mira, which is actually, I think, the Globe's only bilingual
Yes.
newsletter. It's really good. There's a lot of pet coverage, but tons of other stuff as well. I always read it. And I will end by saying Benito for president.
Yes, please.
We might as well try it.
Yes,
we tried lots of
exactly.
other stuff. He seems like a great guy. Thank you so much, Marcela, for joining.
Thank you for having me, Anna.
Well, a good dog on the ground's worth 3 in the saddle, no matter where you're from. Been many good dog was a friend to a man, but Sam was the greatest one. He was a hound of hounds, he was the wonder of all walkers. He loved howling at the moon, he loved treeing that raccoon. Most of all, he was my best friend, and he's gone too soon.
More of the comment section after a short break. Welcome back to Say More's The Comment Section for Boston Globe Opinion. I'm Anna Kussmer. I'm joined again by Boston Globe Opinion's letters editor, Matthew Bernstein. Hi, Matthew.
Hi, Anna. Thanks so much for having me back.
Yeah, of course. So what we did in the last episode, we want to do again is kind of reach into the mailbag and pull out some notable letters that you got in the last month. Has it been a busy month for you?
Oh, it has. The month of November into December, yes, quite busy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Do you find that
yeah.
the news cycle, like when there's a lot of news, there's a lot of letters? Is that sort of how it usually goes?
It does. It does. I mean, there's certain seasonal, slow periods, but, anytime there's a presidential election, I'm swimming in it. And, just because there's an election, one, and two, because an election brings out so many, burning issues and, sort of issues around that really divide people. And so, it goes out like concentric circles of debate.
Yeah, and everyone has an opinion they just absolutely need to share about what's going on in the news.
Right.
It can be probably a really nice way to get an idea, a thought or an idea off someone's chest to send
Most
you their
definitely.
letter.
Yeah, that's the other thing is that they're so passionate about it, at times like these. So November was, yes, I was busy.
Yes. So you identified one news story this month that really drove a lot of opinions and a lot of letters, kind of a local story that had national implications.
Most
Which one
definitely.
did you choose?
So the one I chose was, the firestorm of controversy that erupted after Representative Seth Moulton, Massachusetts Representative Seth Moulton, made the comments about identity politics, the Democrats, and transgender youth sports. And, that's a perfect example of what I was just saying before about those concentric circles and how a presidential campaign brings out so much. And these are just, in the waning days, Democrats are trying to pick up the pieces, trying to figure out what went wrong. And Moulton makes these comments. And so I got so many letters from people all over the spectrum of the debate he raised.
So recap, basically, there was a New York Times article. The theme of the article was why Democrats lost. Did they blow it? And they were talking to different politicians about their opinions. Seth Moulton came out with this idea that, I don't want to get this wrong, but he was basically saying that the emphasis that he thinks that the emphasis on identity politics, and he actually specifically calls out transgender rights.
Yeah, and let me see if I won't get his quote exactly right, but I think I can paraphrase it, which is essentially, look, I've got 2 daughters, and, I'm concerned about them being knocked over by a male or formerly male, athlete on the schoolyard. And as a Democrat, I'm not supposed to be able to say this out loud. So, I mean, that's as close as I can get to paraphrasing it. And that was, that just set people off.
Yeah, it sort of made the point that, Republicans really dug into this idea that Democrats are too obsessed with being politically correct around identity
Mhm.
politics. And he's saying, and there are certain things I'm not allowed to
Right.
say as a Democrat. And of course, people had really strong
Oh, yeah.
thoughts about Seth
And the Trump
Moulton's
campaign, I mean, they had this
comments.
very effective ad that the
Yeah.
Harris campaign did not really counter, which is about the Democrats being the party of they, them.
Mm-hmm.
So, this was, I mean, Moulton was really getting at something,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, his comments were, the way they were phrased. I mean, people who could defend them could see a lot in it, but people who were really offended by it were
Mm-hmm.
genuinely offended by it.
So you got a lot of letters on this, and I
I
know
did.
you published a lot, but you picked two today that really sort of illustrated the wider debate. So take me through those.
Yeah, I love these letters. So one is under the subhead, Moulton heaps blame for election losses on vulnerable children.
My name is Mark Sheridan.
He says, okay, so, Seth Moulton is upset at his party's poor showing. Instead of maybe asking why the Democrats failed to present a compelling economic vision to the electorate, he picks on kids.
One would think that his call for Democrats to be, quote, brutally honest would herald some level of introspection or accountability over the party's losses. Instead, in an embarrassing fit of pique, the congressman and grown man directed his rage not at the failures of his own party, but at students at play. Children, in other words. And not just any children, but trans children, who already suffer some of the highest rates of bullying and suicidal ideation in the country. How very brave. Bullying from classmates is bad enough without an assist from your elected officials. If the congressman is looking for people to offend, perhaps he should pick on someone his own size.
The other letter I chose, which I think I published maybe 4 or 5 days after Mark Sheridan's, this obviously was an issue that lasted for quite a while. Under the subhead, Congressman has drawn the left and right out of their echo chambers, came to us from Daniel L. Goldberg of Boston.
It is possible to be totally supportive of transgender youth and also have concerns about girls competing in athletics against those who were born male.
And here's somebody who was, identified himself as a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, also the loving, completely supportive grandfather of a transgender young adult. But at the same time, he really saw in Moulton's comments that Moulton wasn't really, he wasn't blaming transgender youth for the party's losses. In fact, what he was just trying to do was say, look, there are some difficult conversations to have, and if we don't have them, and if people clamp down on them, it's the same kind of what he calls reflexive arrogance that cost the Democratic Party millions of votes.
Issues are far more nuanced than either the left or the right are often willing to recognize. Unless we are willing to recognize and appreciate and discuss legitimate concerns of others, satisfactory solutions to issues will evade us, and we will retreat to our echo chambers. So give Moulton a break. He loves his daughters, and he supports the rights of LGBTQ individuals. Forthright discussion about such matters, rather than denigrating those who don't adopt a purist view, is what is needed.
So, between those two letters, you really have the full spectrum of the kind of debate that Moulton set off. They're very, they're very emotional, but at the same time, they're really rational and thoughtful as well. So.
So, Matthew, we hope some of our listeners will become letter writers and join the conversation. So remind our listeners how to reach you and how to respond to the news and possibly find themselves on Say More.
Yeah, that'd be great. So send something to us by letter@globe.com. It's LETTER singular @globe.com. Give us your name, where you're from. Give us your phone number. We won't publish your phone number, but it helps us get in touch with you. And try to keep it under 200 words or less. But yeah, we'd love to hear from people. I think there's a certain level of comment that comes when people sign their name to something, and that they take some time with it. They know that they're putting their name out there, and we love to hear from them.
It's engagement we love to see. Matthew Bernstein is the Boston Globe opinion section's letters editor. Thank you so much for joining me. Talk to you soon.
All righty, and I look forward to it.
Say More is a production of the Boston Globe. Today's episode was produced by me with help from Shirley Leung. Our editor is Jim Dow. Our engineer is Uzair Ahmed. If you like the show, please follow us and leave us a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can email us at saymore@globe.com. and to see pictures of Shirley's dog, Marcela's dogs, and maybe even my dog, you can go to our Instagram page, Globe Opinion. I'm Anna Kussmer. Thank you so much for listening.